Hey, Frank, thanks for joining us today. As we're getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for having me. So Frank Zito, I'm an account executive for a mini street. And, my story, everyone who comes on here tells you, well, my story is a little different. And I'm going to do the same thing. So it all started, when I was 6 and left at the circus. No, for me, it was my senior year of high school. And actually, it was my junior year of high school. My football coach, so I was captain of the team, right? Captain of football and the baseball team. The football coach said, "Look, we need you to do the play." And I said, "Oh, pass play, run play? No, the school play." Coach, no, please, please don't make me do this. He said, "Look, you're a captain. They think we're a bunch of, heathens, and you got to do the play, and that's that." And my mom dragged me to the audition, kicking and screaming. And the play was Guys and Dolls.
Oh boy.
And oh yeah, yeah. And you know, I did the play and I loved it. And then I did more plays. And then I joined speech team. And then I started taking voice lessons. And had to deal with everybody on my team razzing me for doing that.
Oh,
And at the end of my high school career, I had the opportunity to play football scholarship to Division II school, or take an acting scholarship. And I took the acting scholarship. So it's what I studied for 4 years. I studied at the Moscow Art Theater abroad for a year, and did that professionally for about 6 years. And so from acting and waiting tables and auditioning and being rejected constantly, you see where I'm going with this, my path to sales. And my uncle has been in the beauty industry for 30 years. And he said to me, "Hey, we're opening up a Paul Mitchell cosmetology school, and you'd be great. What are you going to do? The acting thing forever? Come on, come work with me in the school." I was 24. I'm 40 now. I was 24 at the time. And I said, "Wow, Paul Mitchell, the shampoo guy? I don't know about that. All right, let me see. What do I have to lose?" And I did that. And that was my first kind of step into sales. So I was with the schools for about 6 years, and I grew in the organization to director of sales. Um, I helped train over 100 admissions people, for-profit school. And from there in 2014, I kind of hit the ceiling in my career, and I said to my wife, who's a hairdresser, who I met while I worked in the schools, and as that happens, I'm a hairdresser as well. And I said, let's just open up our own salon. Let's do the entrepreneurial thing. Let's just do it. What do we have to lose? And she looked at me and said, our house, everything. And I said, look, we don't have kids yet. Let's take a chance. So we did. We partnered with a couple who I consider mentors of mine, who very business savvy. He was Kurt and Kathy Stolting. He was a CEO of many large organizations, and Kathy worked for McDonald's Corporation, in accounting, finance, commercial development, real estate development. So we kind of married their business skills and our knowledge of the beauty industry, and we launched our own startup. So we opened 4 locations in 12 months, blow dry salons in the Chicagoland area, and positive cash flowing in 6 months. Launched our franchise program 4 years later, October of 2019, and a few months later, COVID hit. And so now, my wife and I had our first baby March 24th of 2020. Built our first house. Things were good, and yeah, COVID hit. So I looked at my wife and I said, all these years, our family, who've been telling us, your eggs are in one basket, that's, be careful, kind of came to fruition. And I looked at her and said, I'm looking at the P&L, and it does not make sense for us to both be in this. So you stay in the salons, I'll jump back in the sales and go from there. And I was interviewing a lot, and look, I don't have ERP on my resume. And so a friend of mine worked at Rimini Street, and he said, look, um, you don't have ERP, you don't have software or anything that on your resume. I know you can do this, but you're going to have to start entry level. Now I'm 37 years old. You're going to have to take an SDR position. And it's like, there's no way I could, come on, that's crazy. Look at all I've done, and I've done this, and I've moved mountains. And I sucked it up, and I did that. I took an SDR position. And at least with Rimini, I was the number one SDR and namer in terms of meetings. I had 37 meetings my first year, VP and above. I was number four globally out of like 50 SDRs. Then they moved me to an ISR position a few months later. I did the same thing there. And I finally said to them, look, you guys are sleeping on me. Put me in the field. Give me your worst territory. And they did.
Very
And
cooperative.
yeah, oh yeah. I said, yeah, and let's see what I can do. And that's kind of where I am today with Rimini. So that's a bit of my journey.
Yeah. And let's go back to the acting, because there's an
Yeah, yeah.
enormous number of
Yep.
salespeople who come from the performing arts, music,
Sure.
debating,
Correct.
acting, comedy.
Hmm. Yeah. It's I heard this on, I think, another podcast you had. Somebody talked about, being a good listener, right? And I know that's a good quality to have, but what does that actually mean, right? And I think there's a difference between, hearing someone and, I think from a sales standpoint, a lot of times we listen for what we can sell into. Right? We're trying to listen for
What
pain,
we
and it's
want
like,
to hear.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Oh gosh, we're spending too much money. Well, we can help with that. We're down on resources. We can backfill for you. And as opposed to leaning in, being an active listener, leaning in. And I think the key here is, and this is what I got from my acting, is having a point of view about it, right? We talk about being curious, but having a point of view about something, whether it aligns or not with who you're talking to, um, I think that's the key. I think that's the difference. And I think it helps break down some of the barriers of being the sales guy or sales girl that's coming to a call to do their pitch. Right. I mean, I hear it a lot, and I did it early on in my career. Is you start talking about the weather on a call, like, oh, how's the weather by you? And even if you're genuine about I always laugh about this. Even if you're genuine, and it's just like, oh gosh, it immediately, and it somewhere inside of them, just sales guy. I'm talking to a sales guy So, needless to say, I don't talk about the weather anymore. Or
Well,
I try not to.
let's dig into that. When you
Yeah,
say have a point of view, can you give us an
sure.
example?
Yeah, sure. So, I think having a point of view about something, it's where it kind of hits you from an emotional standpoint. So, for example, if somebody says to me, I think I'm just going to do nothing. I think that's the safest play. Uh, I won't say have a negative point of view. I'm not a dummy. I'm not going to say, well, that's ridiculous. But I'd have a point of view of and tying it to empathy, which it's super important. But it's having a point of view of like, look, I get that. Um, and I understand the risk. Look, you guys had two cybersecurity attacks this year, so making a move, um, I totally get that. And to be honest, I don't know that I'd make the move in your shoe. But here's what I do know, and right, but I think having a point of view and having an emotion, um, to allow empathy to come through, so you can align with them, right? It's like it's empathizing with them, and then kind of expanding their point of view, and then aligning with them, right? So that's kind of how I look at that. Um, but anyways, I think too often sales folks come to calls, they have their deck, they have their talk track, and when you do, it's like an actor with a script. It's the same thing. And, when I was acting, I'd have actors on stage who just weren't in the moment. They weren't living truthfully. And I knew it. They'd have a prop somewhere, and they knew just where to grab that prop. And it was just programmed.
Mechanical.
And maybe I would move that prop a certain night to throw them off a little to get something real from them. the stage manager and have a talk with me about that. But I would do that, and I see the same thing with salespeople, right? And I just think ditch the script, ditch the PowerPoint, and just have a real conversation. And that's where I've found a lot of success in my time here.
Why do you think people don't do it? Is it laziness or is it they just
Fear, it's
fear?
fear.
Okay.
I really think, and look, you can make an argument, yeah, if it's laziness, like, well, this is how I've always done it, right? But I think that's fear based. And I think knowledge conquers fear. And I think, you said it, right? A lot of salespeople come from the acting space or, gosh, when I was taking improv classes at Second City, I remember sales guys being in there, they'd show up in their suits and I'm sitting there like, what is this guy doing? And the fear of getting up in front of people and being
Being
vulnerable.
judged.
Yeah,
Yeah.
being judged, being vulnerable. I really think that's what it is. It's we all have defense mechanisms, and part of when I was in acting school was is breaking down a lot of that. So breaking it down in yourself, but being able to break it down in others and picking up on the little behaviors and I see that. So I know when someone's engaged when I'm talking with them. I know when I don't have a deal. I don't have to ask, is this real? I know. And I can adjust accordingly in the cycle.
Because when you talk off script, you have to ignite your prefrontal cortex. You can't go off your
Yeah.
subconscious mind,
Correct. Yeah, that's exactly right.
which is
And I think too, it ties into the fear, but it also ties into an ego thing. And I see that a lot with especially seasoned reps. Um, that's important, right? You got to have a healthy balance of ego, I think, but I think they don't go off script because if they get caught in a spot, not caught, but they're in a situation where they're uncomfortable or what do I do? Malfunction. They don't want to be in that position. So I think that ego can be a little dangerous as well.
yeah, because ego tends to get in the way a lot of times.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And look, for some folks at work, that lone wolf mentality.
Yeah,
Hey, if
it
if
can
that
help
works for
too.
you, it can help too. It can absolutely help. There's no one way to do what we do. For me, that's it's never been my approach. I'm more of a let's rally the troops and engage the cavalry and darken the skies with our team. But that works some of the time, and sometimes it doesn't.
And what was that first year like going from B to C to B
Yeah,
to
to B to
B?
B. Yeah, it's funny you bring that up. I think about being in the salon trying to sell a $100 membership to a customer, to then having conversations with companies who are 40 to 50 billion in revenue, C-suite folks. And I think the thing of it is a lot of the people who came into our salons are those people. And title aside, they're just people. You just have to know um, how to communicate with them, right? And I think that's where I run into trouble. I'm Italian and Greek, so I like to talk a lot, and I'm a storyteller. But boy, the C-suite, it's just give me bullet points. I don't need all the fluff, right? But yeah, for me, it was humbling for sure. It was a step back into the rejection of I wrote a really great customized email. I put my heart into that. I talked about a restaurant that I saw they posted on their LinkedIn that I go to and they didn't respond to me.
How
How
dare
could they
they?
do?
How
How could
rude.
they? Yes, yes. And it did take me back to the days of when I was auditioning and acting, and you don't even hear anything. And it's not even about your talent, it's you're too short. You're
Right.
too this, you're too ethnic. You look like my ex-boyfriend's brother, and that's why you didn't get the part. So I dealt with that, but I think the success I had just as an SDR, I just in my outreach tried to have real conversations, right? I mean, Brian, if you look at your phone, and I guess anybody listening, if they looked at their phone and pulled up their Yahoo or their Hotmail, and they'd see a lot of the junk that comes in, the junk email, just from looking at the subject line or looking at who it's from, I'm not even going to open that. I'm just going to delete that. So I worked really hard at crafting good subject lines and having good content in my emails that were real. Um, and then I can connect with someone on a human level versus here's my pitch with all my bullet points and bolded words, and I'm strategically going to put this word at the front of the sentence, and because I Gartner says I get a 20% higher response rate, and if I do 18 touches in 30 days, I'll get somebody to respond because Gartner said so, and I always joke, yeah, the response is leave me alone, uh, so
Well,
yeah,
I think what the acting teaches people is that it's all emotion.
yes,
Acting's not logic, right? It's emotion.
correct. Correct. Yeah, that's exactly right. And I will say, because you bring up a good point, just like in bowling, speed kills. Emotion kills as well sometimes. I think it's important to have emotional intelligence. But it's one of the things I've learned here is, not to sound like Elsa, but let it go. And sometimes you need to be able to take a step back and say, okay, maybe not today's business, but it could be tomorrow's business. And taking things personally, you have the ego thing, that can be dangerous. So, that's an important skill to have, I think.
And how have you liked it on the outside, having a territory, regardless
Great.
of
Yeah, it's
how?
great. Yeah, well, so it's a good point, right? I joke about this, about how I said, give me your worst territory, but it's just like in acting. There's no small parts. There's just small actors. And I will say that about territory, because if you look at a territory on paper and you see maybe other reps who came in and couldn't do anything with it, so you're hearing everybody else say, "Oh, that's a tough one. That's not a great deal. You might want to reconsider. You should ask for other accounts." I took it more of a challenge to say maybe I could be the first rep to make my territory pop. And I will say in the territories that I'm in, that's exactly the case. I think the folks in any company, when they look at a territory and they think, oh, there's not a lot here. Um, I think that's usually a gross assumption. There's always, um, whether it's business to win or relationships, because those relationships, when they're at a company, especially at the C-suite, they're there 2, 3 years and then they're on to the next. So if I can create a relationship with someone, a genuine relationship, how can I help you? And they go somewhere else, and maybe there is business there for me, and there is an opportunity for a partnership. It's the long game, and that's how I kind of embrace being in the territory. Time in territory, yeah, that does matter, absolutely. But I'm starting to see that now that I've been in the territory here for about a year and a half. Things are starting to, when people said, no way, absolutely not, stop calling me. How dare you? What a misrepresentation you have of our little, city of or county of, because I read their financials and, maybe call that out like, hey, it looks like you guys need some cost savings. And now I go to dinner with these people, and text and how are the kids, and I think that human aspect is important. It's just hard for us, I think, as sales folks, because as you talk about, it's like, what's in your pipeline, when are you getting this done, when are we closing this, and I get that. I've been on the ops side, I've been on the business side, so I get P&L, and I know that's important. But the long game, it absolutely matters. I talk about that. Today's traffic is tomorrow's business. So the traffic you have, whether it's emails, phone calls, relationship building, that's going to pay off in the long run.
And how about the shift in the mindset between, because you were retail essentially, right?
Yeah, essentially, yeah, yeah,
Where people come to you. You
correct.
don't go do a cold outreach in the street,
Yeah,
right? They
yeah,
they come
yeah.
in the store,
Uh-huh. Yes,
business to business, where probably at least in your territory, there's not much warm inbound.
correct, correct. Yeah. So, um, for me, especially coming, off of COVID, I started at Rimini in 2021, so that was still, things were heightened, and with work from home, I find, and look, you'll talk to 10 other reps that say, no, no, that I get people on the phone all the time. I wasn't getting people on the phone. And if I did catch them on the phone or on their cell, it was, yeah, 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 send me an email. I'm driving. So the success I had was predominantly email. It was predominantly LinkedIn. LinkedIn is really for me, it was my source of truth. Um, so I can connect the dots and tell a story. Who knows who came from where, what role were they in, what are they interested in, what are they commenting on other people's posts. And I hate to sound like a total creeper, like I'm hiding in their bushes, like, oh wow, they eat steak for dinner. But doing some of that background helps craft a real message where there's something in it for them. But you're right, it was having to go out. When you talk about activity, that was that was challenging in the beginning because it's like, wow, I feel like I've made 80 calls today and I've made like
Nothing.
14. Yeah, exactly.
It's 10
It's like,
o'clock.
yeah. Oh, it's and it's my own fault. The office in the house we built was supposed to be the office. Then we had our daughter, and now that's the playroom. So I've been delegated to the basement where there's no window. And so
Oh
I'm in the
God.
dark in this dungeon, and it's 8, 9 o'clock at night. My wife's like bringing me dinner over my shoulder. Um, yeah. So I don't always believe in burnout. I think you just kind of have to realign the strategy and connect that to your passion. But yeah, activity matters. I mean, if you're not touching people, what are you doing? Because in this business, people will not come to you. I can't rely on inside sales, and not because we don't have a strong team. That's maybe more of my lone wolf mentality. Like, you guys do your thing. We'll have our conversations. We'll strategize. Uh, these are the people I want you to go after. These are the accounts, but this is what I'm focused on, and I'm going to do my thing. And if I get something from them, a conversation, I look at it as icing on the cake, right? So yeah,
And how about the longer, in retail, I did retail. It's they
yeah,
either
sure,
buy or they don't buy, or maybe they'll buy
yep,
next time.
yeah,
And
exactly.
in business to business, it's like even if they say they're going to buy, you don't know if they're going to buy until they do buy. And you've got this long, arduous gauntlet that you have to go through.
Absolutely. And there's so, depending on what industry you're in, there's so many layers to the cycle in terms of who you're talking to, right? So, I sell into the CIO, right? Because we're selling support, technology support. And oftentimes it's not even the CIO's decision. It's influence, right? But
Yeah,
I got to go
right.
to the CF. I have to go to the CFO. Now we got to bring them in, and now we have a steering committee that we need to do. Oh, we can't forget about procurement. Looks like this has to go to RFP, and so it's yes, it is an emotional roller coaster. But I think one of my mentors, he's actually my VP of sales, Guy Jeffrey. He said to me, "Don't be a roller coaster, be a train." And I think that's real important. It's one of the things that I'm picking up on in my time here, is to be a train, because I've had people tell me, "Yep, this is all but done," and deal doesn't get done. So it's not done until the ink's dry, right?
Well, that's it, because the people who say, "Oh, it's all but done," don't have control,
Yes, yes,
right? They
yeah,
have
it's exactly
influence.
right. Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of funny. I had a call, and yeah, I had a cycle, and it was yes, 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 yes. And then it was, oh, we didn't make the RFP deadline. I guess this has to go to RFP. And it was all these things. And then we went to RFP. It allowed a competitor to come in, and we didn't win the business after 4 months of, yes, it's you guys. Well, then on a next call that I had with a totally different prospect, it was like, so do you guys have an RFP deadline? What is that? Because I was just so on tilt, on edge, just to understand. But I think, you know, uh, understanding the elements of their process. And I don't want to say their buying process, because the people who own the buying process, sometimes they don't even know.
They don't know what it is.
Yeah, they don't even know what it is. What's
What's your
your
decision
what's your
criteria?
decision criteria? There you go. And they look at you like, what I mean, what do you mean? And it's just it's a weird thing. Yeah, okay, that's so funny then. Okay. Yeah.
Well, that's it. I used to ask that question all the time
Yeah.
until no one ever gave me a real answer.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
And
Um,
what was that
yeah.
like learning all that? That must have been overwhelming.
Oh, for sure. Because, on one hand, it's like, okay, I have to get a deal done. And I know the gymnastics internally of things I need to do to negotiate things and move things along and get legal to get this done for me quickly and XYZ. But then to understand, well, now I got to understand all their processes and complexities and who's who in the zoo. And now who do I have to win over? Right. Or now who's saying no? Who's this person that wasn't part? Oh, new leadership. New objectives in the business. So yeah, it can be overwhelming for sure. But I think if you go into it expecting all that, it's not as jarring. And that's what I've started to do of, I don't want to say talk is cheap, but just stay the course, anticipate things that could pop up. How can I lose this deal? What could happen?
Ask the hard
So I
questions.
it's
Yeah.
ask the hard questions and the powerful questions, and I try to reverse engineer and really work backwards. Um, when I say like I think I'll get that closed in 2 months, I tack another 2 months onto that.
Smart.
So yeah.
And what do you think separates you from most reps that you've seen?
Yeah. So I think a couple of things. I think my background as an entrepreneur allows me to have that entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
The things that kept me up at night, even in our small $2 million business, payroll, resources, P&L, marketing, budget, are the same things that keep these folks up at night. It's just a different scale.
Different
Uh,
scale. Yeah.
it's a different scale. There's different complexities. But the thing that keeps you up at night, the thing that makes your heart sink into your stomach, that's the same. And so I think I'm able to connect on that and have it resonate more. Now, look, I don't get on calls with CIOs of $30 billion companies saying, I'm Frank, the hairdresser salon owner, and I'm going to sell you software support. Uh, no, not at all. But it allows me to have the real conversation. So I think that's the first thing. I think the other thing is having a servant's heart and you know having a servant's heart. That's just there's layers to that. Integrity, doing the things you know other people just aren't willing to do.
Yeah.
And I know, and we talk about the grind. Salespeople, it's like, oh, I worked so hard today, you should see how many, look at my fingers, how many emails I sent. But it's like we started a company from scratch. We have 40 employees, and we know how to grind that out. As an actor, I know how to grind that out. When I lived in California for a year in Venice Beach, selling salt rocks on the beach to make ends meet, I know innately what the grind is. And so I think as a sales rep, look, you have some sales reps that they just have a ton of relationships and they're relationship sellers, and that's what they do. You have other reps that you know, they feel like at the stage of the game that they're in, they shouldn't have to prospect. And I think and I think I've redefined the art of prospecting just a smidge because it's worked for me. Um, and that was the funny thing in terms of negotiating my way into the territory. I joke about you know, give me your, untouched territory or worst territory. But I said, look, you guys are hiring a lot of folks that the hunt is gone. It just is. And it's what if they come from big companies where leads just fall into their lap.
Oh, yeah. They
And
have existing accounts, they
oh,
upsell.
yeah,
It's a
that's exactly,
different
the
world.
game. It's a totally different world. And I just think, especially in what we do, competing against Oracle and SAP for the support business, you have to get out there. You have to roll up your sleeves. You have to show that you're hungry. And I think that's the difference. And the third thing, because there's a third thing, um, I play nice. And I don't just mean with customers, I don't mean the nice guy thing. I mean internally. I think a lot of reps um, don't understand the power of being nice and um, when you're trying to get things done internally. We talk about how hard it is to sell a deal. You know how hard it is to sell it internally? Um, it's like, hey, Frank, it's end of the quarter. I don't think I can pump that NDA out to you. Uh, but and I hear that from the other reps, like, oh, legal's not working fast enough for me, or this isn't happening, and it's like, really? Because I got it in like a half hour, and it's not to be pretentious. It's not to be how can I leverage. It's just being nice to people because you don't know what's going on in their day, and if you can just make them have a 10% shift in their outlook just because of what you've done for them, whether it's a high five or, hey, great job in that presentation. Thanks for showing up for me. Thanks for getting me this proposal on time. That gets overlooked, Brian. And
It
I think,
is. It's
especially
very
because we're not in the,
overlooked.
and I know it's so like, some people might hear that and be like, okay, oh, we want a pat on the back. Oh, geez. That's not what I mean. And I am 40 and I am a millennial. I just made the cutoff, but it does go a long way. You have no idea.
Cool. Hey, this has been a great conversation, Frank. Where can people
Yeah.
go to connect and follow you?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn, Frank Zito. I'm at Rimini Street, and yeah, and I'm based in Chicago. So anybody out there who is in the Naperville area, feel free to drop me a line. Happy to get a cup of coffee with you and spend some time.